one of our own shells landed right behind us. It was a misfire. And it cut, and his head was completely blown off, and I was standing right next to him. And it could have been me just as well as him.
Share with us your first and last name.
Joe, Joe Sciarra Jr. I'm a World War II veteran, yes.
Before the war, before the uniform, who were you as a young man?
I was a happy kid at all times. The day I was born, and I just loved everybody, especially my mother, dad, and my brothers and sisters. But I had one older sister sort of looked after me, being a sibling, you know, the youngest sibling, you know, where mom couldn't handle all of them, but she sort of took over and make sure I was living a good life and growing up to be a young man like the rest of my brothers, you know. And I had a special aunt and uncle that I consider them as my life. They sort of took care of me. My mom had 6 siblings, so my aunt and uncle sort of helped grow me up, and so I got very attached to them. They're beautiful, and I lived a good life with them, and they spoke a lot of Italian. And I learned how to speak a little Italian because of them, and I did very well. I was happy with that. I was a young man. I was in high school before I went to war, and I did very well in high school. I got the highest honor anyone could get. I was able to speak to 4,000 people without any notes at high school, and and after my 12th year, I was drafted.
Do you remember the moment you realized your life was about to change forever?
The life, actually going into the service was a thing that I was very upset with our country because we not participated fast enough to save 3,500 men in Hawaii. And so I was upset the fact that Japan wanted to take over our country, and so I wanted to be a member of the armed forces to participate and do my duty and for my country. And as a young person, I was 16 years old when I was very upset with our president because he was not doing nothing to build our country up, knowing what was happening all over the world. So I felt I was very into being a good member and fighting the war wherever they did with me. I was not looking for any specific department in that service. I just went in, and whatever they decided I should be, that's what I was. I was an infantryman with the 25th Infantry Division with General MacArthur, and I was proud of that. And so then when I graduated, a day after I graduated, I went into service immediately. I was drafted, and after basic training, I boarded a ship in San Francisco and ended on my way to whatever I was supposed to be. I landed in the island of Guadalcanal, and I joined the 25th Infantry Division there, and there we were doing a lot of training there. And I was in an 81 millimeter mortar company, and that's a 150-pound weapon in 3 pieces, and I learned that very well. And so we couldn't do very much, you know, until the Japanese Navy and our Navy were able to come to an end of that Pacific. We had, at that time, Japan owned the Pacific, so we had to get in there with our ships, and they had the, and I think it was in Philippines, one of the island Philippines, where they had the major Navy war, and we lost a lot of ships and men, but we beat the Japanese there and destroyed their navy in the Philippines. And so that opened the way for us to make the landing in Luzon, which is the capital of the Philippines. And and that was very important for us to take the Philippines because we needed that so the Marines just started opening the door for them to get all the little islands around Japan, that was a tough job for the Marines. And our job was to get in there and destroy whatever Japanese were left in the Philippines. And we were fighting 100,000 Japanese, and we were only 30,000 men. And before we hit the jungle, which is all the ridges, we were in two ambushes, in one ambush, I could have been dead. The Japanese always were afraid of our 81 millimeter mortars, so the first thing they would do is try to destroy us. And they found our location. We were 6 men working on 2 weapons, and 3 of our men died there, and I could have been very one same. So, and then we were set up, in this particular area, and I heard a lieutenant holler, "Get the F out of there," and I heard what he said, and I thought that was a very, very important word. So I took there were 3 tubes. There was a tripod, a tube, and a base plate. My part was the tube. So I took that tube and run out of there, and shells were falling all over me. And some of the shrapnels that had hit me in a certain spot, but it was hitting my tube, which is a 45-pound tube and long. So the shells were hitting the tube, and I got out of there very nicely. But we lost 3 men in that operation, and then we had the artillery come in place and wiped out the Japanese that we were caught in an ambush, actually, and we were trying to find out where the Japanese were, and so but anyway, we got out of that alive, and they told us that 50% of you are going to be, it's a kill or be killed, suicidal operation, and 50% of you are not going to make it back home.
You saw friends die. How did you keep going the next day?
Well, the thing is that we had a war to win. When our men were killed, I can tell you one story. I had a friend, his name was Fred Arcangelo. And we were setting up our gun, ready. We were told that we need to be ready to fire our weapons. When we stand together, and while we were waiting, he was telling me that he's from Philadelphia, and he was a divorcee, and he had a little child. And he was telling me that in the holidays, he would try to go and visit his little child, and they wouldn't let him in. So in the meantime, I was ready to jump in and ready to fire our weapon. One of our own shells landed right behind us. It was a misfire, and his head was completely blown off, and I was standing right next to him. And it could have been me just as well as him. How could you feel? So the first thing we had to do was wrap him up, because we had to keep moving too. We wrapped him up in his ponchos or whatever we had, and he took all his belongings and put them on his chest and make sure they were safe, And so we had to leave him there. And the reason why we had to wrap him up, because they may not pick him up for a day or two, and the animals would be around there, so we had to make sure that happened. So so this is the kind of things I've seen all the way through. A lot of our men didn't make it like I did. But the thing I can't understand is that I was right next to the young men like mine. They're my buddies. We shared foxholes together. How you should feel, but we had a war to win, and you had to sometimes do what I told you and had to move on. And so it was the thing. It didn't bother too much there, But when I got home, it really hit me. And that was a hard part. Even today, when I think about it, I shed tears, thinking about my young men. We lost a lot of men, and the Japanese had the advantage because they had some of those ridges were 6,000 feet high, but they had the advantage as we were going up the hill. To they were after the officers and sergeants, and a lot of them were killed because they had emblems on their helmet, and so when we got halfway through, where we took half of the bridges to us, and I was only 19 years old at the time, and I was just a number two man on the gun there. At 19 years old, we lost our platoon sergeant. And so this lieutenant, which I had a rough time with, because he used to send us on, two or three of us on, to look around, walk around the area there and look for where the Japanese were, and that was a suicidal operation. There's a name for it, but I can't come up with that right now. And so this lieutenant I had a tough time with come up to me at 19 years old, made me the platoon sergeant. And so I had a big job to do with 6 weapons and 36 men. We had replacements to come in, and with all our losses, we had a lot of losses, so we had 20 more ridges to go, and I did it very successfully as a 19-year-old boy. Think of that. And all these guys were older than I, tough looking, heavy beards. I never shaved. I still don't shave too much. And I was like a little kid. They made me in charge of all this. But I took care of it. I got all my sergeants together and says, we got to do this together. And we did. We took the other 20 ridges, and we had casualties, but I didn't lose any men at all. I think I did very well, and I got 2 Bronze Stars for that. And so did my platoon.
What do you think kept you alive?
Well, I was not afraid. I was not afraid of death. I was there to fight a war, either kill or be killed, and try to save whatever I can and work together with my buddies and everything so we can help each other out. We were like a family. And so I was not afraid. I was not afraid. I was upset with our enemy and what they've done to a lot of our men and the other parts of the war, and so I was not afraid. I did my job, and not alone, but I did it with my platoon. And as a kid, I mean, when you look like a kid, I never shaved, and then doing what I did, I was proud of myself. I'm going to tell you one thing, my older brother wrote to me one day, and he sent me a prayer. And I was happy about that. He said, I want you to say that prayer every morning. Well, I used to go around and try to find the highest ridge to get on top of it, because I said I'd be closer to the Lord than I say that prayer. And that sort of perked me up a little bit, and do my job along with my other men. I didn't win this war alone. I did with my platoon. We did our share, and we did a good job. We lost some men, I understand that. But you can't be afraid, and you can't. War is war. People are killed all around you, and you got to live with it. If you're going to break down, you're not going to do your job, and the enemy is going to take advantage of you. So we did. I'd be proud of me. I'm proud of my platoon. I'm proud of myself to guide 36 men through what I did as a 19-year-old. And so I think about that, and I lived that, and I felt very, coming home, I felt strong, and I felt good about myself,
Once the war was over and you finally came back home, did the war feel like it was over to you?
Absolutely not. That all stayed with me at all times for life. And then all these other wars that come about, I just felt sorry for all the men. I know what they went through. I know every move they did. And then I just felt bad about that. And I always mention in some of the families that I hate to see an 18-year-old, just a kid yet, go in a war, and that'll be the start of his life. Normally, when you get out of high school, you sort of try to find a direction you're going to go through and live a good life with that. And a lot of us never had that opportunity.
How did the war stay with you after you came home?
It's something you never forget. You don't forget the whole thing. I'd say, "What? How did I go through this like I did?" I don't understand a young man like me at 18 years old. How could that be that I did what I did? And that's why it affected a lot of the young men when we got home. Um, but I lost sight. When I had malaria and I come home, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I did bring my girlfriend from Chicago here, and she was upset with me anyway when she got here because I was supposed to meet her and go to Chicago and meet her and her family and then bring her back. Well, I couldn't. I was ill, so I asked her to come to California, which she did. So when I met her at the station, she was not too happy with me. Then when I went in the hospital, I was in there for 3 weeks, and I had malaria so bad that I thought, well, there's a good chance she may not be there. Why would she want to marry a sick veteran, And so when I got out of the hospital, she was waiting for me at the hospital. That was a beautiful moment for me. I don't know how my wife stayed with me and before we got married and go through what she and I kept having these attacks while we were together before we got married. And yet we did get married and live that beautiful life of 74 years together. And I thought that was beautiful. But I was still today, I go to the VA. VAs have been taking good care of me. I still have problems with my skin, and I have a lot of medication I use on my body, especially my head, where I have little things popping up, and if they don't burn them out, they become cancerous. And I'm lucky I'm still here, and then I feel healthy. I feel like doing the things I do. So I had a hard time, but I would get compensated from the government, and so I was able to keep my wife happy, and so it was a good life.
What do you want younger generations to understand about war? Not from books, but from someone who lived it like yourself.
Well, the only thing I can tell them, we have to have a good, solid military operation in our country, in all departments, at all times. And I think that a lot of these young men today usually volunteer. There's not much drafting and stuff like that right now. But a lot of them are there, and they're in the service today, or volunteers, and you should be very pleased with that because they're still a good job protecting our country. Like I know that last 4 years we had our borders were opened, and we were not building our military. We had about 7 warships just sitting there doing nothing, and while China was building their military up, they had more ships on the Pacific now than we did. And that because we were not doing, but now that we have this new president, everything is on the move again to protect the people of this country. That's very important. Just like the word is like, where you have the force, you have the peace. We'll be peaceful as long as we have a strong military, and that's very, very important. They go volunteer, and when they volunteer, they're going to do a job. All of the departments are Marines and infantrymen. I got to tell you something about infantrymen. We don't get that praise like the Marines or the Navy or the Air Corps or whatever it is. But you got to remember one thing: the military army in Europe won the war there. They took the European country back. And that's the Army took that back with General Eisenhower and Patton and Marshall. And we don't get the credit that the praise of military from like the Marines or the Air Corps or the Navy, because you can't do without them, and they do a great job. You can't do without any department.
in the middle of all this chaos, in overwhelming World War, there was someone waiting for you back at home.
This gal was my brother-in-law's sister. So she was visiting us in California from Chicago. And so I went to Chicago with my brother-in-law and my sister, you know, and she come back with us, you know, back to California. I sat with her all the way from Chicago to here. She would not say one word to me. She had nothing to do with me whatsoever, but I tried to talk with her and she went, I said, oh my God. So we got home, you know, and then my sister was the same age, so they got together. I always try to get close to her and talk with her all the time she was here, you know. And then when she wanted going back to Chicago, I bought a necklace and I gave it to her. She accepted it, but it didn't much of anything to me, you know. And then she left and I never heard from again as long as I remember, until in the Philippines I got a letter from her sister. Her sister said, my sister Lucille would like to write to you. Man, you know what that did to me? It made me a brand new man there in the Army, ready to go. And so she wrote to me, and we wrote together for 2 years. And we made plans in our letters that we were going to be together for life, you know. And when I got back, I would go back to Chicago, meet her, and then they come back to California and live a beautiful life together. She had leukemia in the later years, you know, and so I kept her here. I would not get her in a hospital. And whatever money I had, I spent everything and make sure I can keep her alive at all times, because down the line I knew something was going to happen. And up till today, I shed so many tears for her. But I said money meant nothing. Money meant nothing. I had 3 women with her at all times for I don't know how many years. But losing her was I learned to live. I got her in my one of my rooms. I built a nice little area for her and I. So I go in there every night, pray with her, talk to her. And I had to go and get a reverse mortgage, you know, and that was a big mistake. And to the point where I tried to make payments on that, and that I couldn't do. So I tried to pay interest only on my universe mortgage, and the interest rate kept going up where I could not pay anything anymore. I didn't have any money, enough money to do that. And today, right today, I owe $1 million.
If your wife could hear you right now, what would you want to say to her?
Well, first thing I would tell you, I love you, dear. I love that woman. And I would actually, with all the traveling I've been doing, everything, you know, we traveled a lot together. We've been to Canada and we've been to the Orient, and she was not neglected in any way in traveling, but the thing that really bothers me more today, I've been all over the country in speaking engagements, you know, World War II, that she's not with me. I said, this would have been one beautiful thing happening to her, and I had to see what I am able to do. I didn't know I was able to speak like I did. And I just want to speak. I just speak out loud. I tell them the story of the men and what they went through in wartime and their combat and the worst part of their life, you know, and how many men got killed and everything, and right next to me. I saw it all. I saw it all, and that's the sad part. And
At 101 years old, what do you feel most grateful about?
well, I am more grateful the fact that I'm healthy. I do have problems through the war that will be with me the rest of my life. I miss all my brothers. I miss my sisters, my mom and dad. And I feel comfortable. The veterans taking care of me, pays me enough money per month to keep me alive and pay my bills and everything. Um, we raised Joe, and I made sure that through my life I took care of Joe and his wife, and the best thing that ever happened, getting two beautiful grandchildren. They have my granddaughter has twins, boys, and my son has a nice, beautiful daughter and a son. They were really my family. They're there for me. They'll go shopping and they'll buy my clothes for me. They'll do things, whatever I need, they'll get for me. My grandson always calls, well, what do you need, Grandpa? Well, I don't like it. I don't like to. Don't like to ask for anything, but he does it without not me asking, and they're for me. They're my family.
You were awarded 2 Bronze Stars. Even today, 80 years after the war still visits you in your sleep.
Absolutely.
How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I think, you know what? I think I've been a loving person to many, many people. I have so many friends. Like at church, I have all these people that back there that come to church because of me. And I feel so proud. All the little kids just love me. All the little kids just love me. They all come every Sunday. Every Sunday I have one spot, and they all come in line and shake my hand, I think that is so beautiful. And their parents treat me just beautiful.
You didn't just witness history, you became history. How does that make you feel?
I'm really excited about it. I'm proud of it. Because the message I gave is what the government wanted me to do, and I did a good job with it. I must have did pretty good being invited to all these places and all the cross country like that. And when I get to it, when I'm done speaking, those women especially have tears in their eyes with their hankies, because I tell it like it is. And that's what's going on with a lot of our young men. We lost close to 1 million young men in World War II. And how many more after that with the other wars going on? How many mothers are missing their sons? And that is a sad story. And I tell it what they go through. And that's what they want me to do.